Hi, I'm David Domke. I'm chair of the Department of Communication at the University of Washington. Every once in a while I get a chance to sit down with an alum who has done some really important things in their community and professionally, just to talk with them about their work, kind of their experiences at UW, and maybe some advice for current students. We call these Chats with the Chair, and I'm honored today to be joined by a person who's going into our Department of Communication Alumni Hall of Fame here in 2017, Scott Wilson. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, David.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to be here. So, you are a double alum of our program, is that right?
Yeah, I've got a bachelor's degree, journalism focus in 1978, then came back for the master's program, finishing in 86.
When you came in as an undergraduate, were you like dead set on journalism, or did you kind of work your way to it, or what happened?
No, I was actually focused on law. I went into the pre-law program and didn't like that so much. Also realized that there weren't many lawyers that I actually liked all that much. So switched into journalism by walking into the daily newsroom one day and just feeling like this is home. You know, it was noisy, it was boisterous, and I had grown up in a newspaper family. My folks were publishers in Omak, Washington. So that just felt like home and pretty much never left.
So you spent a lot of time in this building then, in the communications?
A lot of time in this building. I spent, I think it took me 5 years to get my bachelor's and then another 3 years to get the master's, so I was here a long time. Yeah.
So what would be kind of one of the things that really excited you about journalism then and carried with you all the way through your kind of journalism career?
You know, one of the things that younger people probably don't know about people of my age is that we came into the program just almost exactly on the top head of the Watergate scandal, where Nixon was, caught doing illegal activities and trying to sustain power by, intimidating Congress, intimidating the political opposition, intimidating journalists, intimidating the courts. So that's when we arrived. That's when I and my cohort arrived here. And what was exciting about journalism was it was the one institution of the American system that was able to be independent enough to stand up, to that abuse of power. And so it was really exciting, and it also felt like it was doing exactly what it should do in a time when someone is sort of running amok.
Sure, I'll come back to that at the end to kind of think about parallels to today perhaps and just what your impressions are. But when you got out of here, did you go straight into journalism, or did you have some other, what was your first job out of college?
Well, my first job, literally, it was an internship at the Port Townsend Leader with Frank Garrett, and then, but I was not quite done with my studies, so went back, finished up. My first job then was at the community paper in Whidbey Island with a publisher named Wally Funk, also a member of the Hall of Fame, as is Frank Garrett.
Yeah.
And then from there to the Everett Herald, into the daily field of newspapers. And it was after the Herald, I did a stint in Nicaragua doing freelance work during the Civil War down there, and then came back to the master's program from that.
What do you think about kind of, well, let me go this route. So you worked a lot of time, you worked for some dailies, you did some freelance work, you've worked for weekly newspapers, you owned Port Townsend Herald. So what kinds of things would you say might make someone to say, hey, I really would like to work for, and then maybe down the road be the publisher of a community newspaper?
Yeah, good question. And it's Port Townsend Leader. So, first off, the great thing about journalism, I think generally, whether it's for a daily or a weekly, is the fact that, assuming you have decent editors, decent bosses, you are this intelligence agent sent out into a situation, and your job is to figure out what's really happening there. It's important to say not just what's happening on the surface, not just what's being said, but what is really going on here. And then coming back and doing additional research and getting additional sources and verifying what you think is happening, and then presenting it in such a way that people can actually are interested and will read it and understand it. I mean, you become the agent of informing, the populace, and in a political sense, informing the democracy as to what's actually happening. And it's so important that people in that position don't get blown off course, because many people that you run into, especially in a difficult story, their task is to try to blow you off course and to send you in a different direction. In terms of the community journalism, which is where I spent most of my life, it's the same mission, but in a community, in a smaller setting. I mean, it's much more intimate, and the advantage of that for a journalist, I feel, is there's a feedback loop that doesn't exist with the larger sort of mass media. You know, you're presenting your information about somebody to an audience. You're seeing that somebody, you know, on Wednesday in the coffee shop. You're seeing your audience all week long, and you're getting a tremendous amount of feedback as to how you did, which is not to say you're more, you shy away from hard subjects, you don't. But you better be right about them because you're going to see the people both who were affected, and you're going to be sort of accountable to the community, which is, you know, relying upon you to be accurate. So in terms of an ownership role in small media, which was available to us through a generous arrangement we made with the previous publisher, Frank Garrett, you have a lot of freedom, both in business and in journalism. But you want to do it in such a way that you're proud of the work that you do. You feel like you do it with integrity, and you feel the community is well served.
Sure. You have a special relationship with the Olympia Legislative Reporting Program. So you went through it, right, as an undergraduate?
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
And then you in the last few years, when you and I had a chance to get to know each other, you were the president of the Washington Newspaper Publisher Association, and the reality is that we have several of our students who intern with them, right? So could you talk a little bit about that program?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I was, back in the day, probably 1976, the leader of that program, and probably the guy who started it, was a guy named Bill Johnston, who had been the editor at the Lewiston paper, just a super hard-nosed, great journalistic editor. So we traveled down with him, did the program, had a ton of fun, learned a lot. My dad was actually a legislator, so I had a little bit of an inside knowledge into the way things work. But then later, back after I finished my master's, David, I worked for the Tacoma News Tribune as their political reporter. So I got back to Olympia, in a full reporting mode, and worked there for about 2 years or so in the legislature and agencies and all that sort of thing. Well, then much later back at the Leader and as the president of the Washington Newspaper Foundation, you together with Frank and with Andrea and at the time Mike Henderson, I think, was involved. Got the program was up again and running. I always thought it was probably the best sort of on-the-ground training that a college journalist could get because you're in a very real situation, again, with a lot of complicated issues and with a lot of people who want to blow you off course, and so your job is to understand what's going on and to stay on course. But then with professional editing by both faculty and by people involved in the industry, and then getting those stories published all over the state, it's real world journalism, and I think journalism is something you, for the most part, learn by doing, and so that was a great experience. And what WNPA did, the Trade Association of Community Papers, is we funded scholarships, so 2 or sometimes even 3 UW students could participate in that and actually, live in something other than the back alley and have a good experience down there.
Yeah, it's been really a tremendous experience for our students. That's at the heart now of our Olympia Legislative Reporting Program. So just a couple kind of maybe last bits of questions here. So when you think about journalism today, in whether it's Western Washington, whether it's in the United States generally, what is you think is the biggest challenge, and what do you think is the biggest kind of exciting thing?
Well, the challenges are I think there's 2. One is the consolidation of media, continues to run amok. I mean, there are fewer and fewer actual owners of media as they purchase more and more properties. And I think in the world of community journalism, this shows up in a sort of a chamber of commerce-y kind of, more neutral journalism that lacks any sort of an edge or aggressive approach to the news because they don't want to tick anybody off, right? They're mostly about distribution as opposed to journalism. And so that's a risk. I think the challenge is that, and this is a challenge that comes to the School of Communications, is attracting young people who are smart, who are determined, who are curious, who are not going to get blown off course because they recognize that the one thing that has held true through all of these years is that truth still can speak to and can influence power. Truth can reveal power. And these days, with everything going on in Washington, D.C., it's more important than ever. And again, I would say, in parallel to what happened in the Watergate years, you do have, at a time when it's really needed, you have good journalism, speaking the truth to a powerful and a powerful administration, which was just as soon, not just direct attention away, but actually attack, the media on a daily basis in terms of what it's trying to do. So it's more important than ever. And the key element is well-educated, strong, and I would even say morally strong, young people getting into the field so they take on telling the truth as a mission.
Well, as a kind of final thing, what would be something if a current student was watching this that you'd say, don't leave the University of Washington without having this kind of experience, this kind of learning? We'll think about this truly in educational sense, not in a social sense.
Yeah.
But what should they not leave this place without doing?
Well, I think they should not leave without working for the Daily or whatever other publications are available for them to work on. I'm not even sure what's still here. But yeah, I mean, that again, that's real world. I would say they should try to do the Olympia program because that's real world. I would say if they can, and I'm sure this is available within the Seattle area, they should try to do internships for community newspapers. And newspapers like The Leader, along with several others, even though they're outside the Seattle area, they love good interns. And they put you up, at least we did, we put you up in an apartment, we paid you money, we threw you right into the newsroom. You're not off rewriting press releases, you're actually coming on and taking on beats. So I would say, get out there and do it, because I do think it's a trade and it's learned by doing. I don't know who your faculty is right now, but obviously there's probably certain faculty who are exceptional journalism teachers. So I'd say spend as much time with them as you can.
Yeah, our journalism instructors right now, Kaylee Cook is the president of the Western Washington Society of Professional Journalists, and Andrew Otana is very active in the local journalism community. So we have a great combination of active journalists who also are teaching journalism. Yeah. So, well, thanks so much, Scott, for taking some time to talk.
My pleasure, David. Thank you.
Yeah. Congratulations on joining our Hall of Fame. It's our honor.
My honor. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm David Domke. I'm chair of the Department of Communication, and I've had a chance here to talk with Scott Wilson about some of his experiences. So, thanks for joining us.